Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So the conference finals start today, and yesterday on my Instagram, I did a list giving my top 10 defensemen in these playoffs remaining based on if they are healthy. You can go check that out if you want. But today, I want to just look at my top 10 skaters. No goalies on this. My top 10 skaters remaining in the playoffs, and I'm going to do a little bit different here than I did on my Instagram. On my Instagram, Adam Fox was my number one defenseman, but I got to admit, he's going through some type of injury. He has not played like Adam Fox, 4 assists, 10 goals. Defensively has not been locked down like you expect from Adam Fox. So I'm going to go just based on their health right now, who I would have, who I think the top 10 players going forward are based on if they're injured, based on how they're playing right now, what kind of form they're in. We're going to run through it right now. So before Ranger fans come at me for not having Adam Fox in this, he'd probably be, if he was fully healthy, probably be number 3 or number 4 on this list. I love Adam Fox as a player. Outside of the ice with him demanding trades. That's another thing. We don't have to get into that right now, but I wanted to run through my top 10 skaters. So without further ado, we'll start with one because like the top 2 is pretty obvious. Up first is Connor McDavid. Even though he also appears to be dealing with an injury, I still think that he's been very good. Obviously, 2 goals, 19 assists. He needs to shoot the puck more. Maybe there is some type of injury limiting his ability to shoot, but he has still been playmaking at an extremely high level. I would pick him over, I should just say right now, number 2 is Draisaitl. I would still think going forward, especially after some days rest after beating the Vancouver Canucks, I think that he's the best player still on the planet, even him at 85-90%. I think he still is better than Draisaitl, and he's the guy that usually sets up Draisaitl for the goals. Draisaitl right now, like I said in my video yesterday, has been like the best player overall in the playoffs, but I think McDavid going forward, he's going to step it up and yet again be the better guy. Next up at number 3, where we start to actually have some debates, the top 2 is pretty obvious. I'm going with Matthew Tkachuk. Not the most impressive regular season, only finished with like 89 points after having 107 last year, being a Hart finalist, but like last year in the playoffs when he just put the team on his back until he broke his sternum in the Stanley Cup final. He had like 18 points in Carolina's 15 or 16 games. No, I think it was even more than that in last year's playoffs. This year, 14 points in 11 games for Carolina. He just rises. He rises to the occasion when it comes to the playoffs. His physical style of play is perfect for the playoffs, getting inside guys' heads. You think about some more undersized stars that maybe don't really translate to the playoffs that much, like a Mitch Marner. Matthew Tkachuk, even in a down year in terms of regular season, he's rising to the occasion, and I think against the New York Rangers, he's going to be massive in terms of maybe bullying an Artemi Panarin, who's also going to be on this list. But Matthew Tkachuk, I love him. I love him as a player. He is just so fun to watch, and he's perfectly suited for playoff hockey. Next up, Alexander Barkov. Barkov has shown up offensively in this year's playoffs, well over a point per game right now, while also being the best defensive center in the entire NHL. And when looking at it sometimes, especially come playoff time, when the game gets tighter, game gets more defensive, you're going to not only need to outscore your opponent, but arguably more importantly, is going to be shutting down the other team's best players. And I think Barkov in this series against the New York Rangers, who aren't like a top-heavy team, they do have depth, but do have some notable superstars, he's going to be massive in terms of that. So I trust Alexander Barkov to not only bring offense to his very, very, very good team and very, very good forward core. Wouldn't surprise me if he gets 10 points in the series against the New York Rangers if it goes 6 or 7 games. But also, I think that he can do a very effective job in maybe shutting down that line of Panarin, Trocheck, and Lafreniere that has been by far the New York Rangers' best lines of the regular season. Has also looked very, very good in these playoffs. Barkov's defensive impact it's not as important. Offense is more important for forward, but for a guy like Barkov, his defensive impact is nearly as important than, say, the offense that he overall brings. Next up, Artemi Panarin, not having a dominant playoffs by his stretch. Only it's 11 points in 10 games right now for Artemi Panarin. But still, I think he is still the best player in the New York Rangers right now in terms of health with an Adam Fox hurt. And I think if they are going to go deep in these playoffs, he needs to show up. Last year in the playoffs, didn't really do jack shit. 2022, he was very good. So I think we're seeing more so of that 2022 version of Artemi Panarin. And this is a guy that shattered his career highs this year during the regular season. He's definitely going to be in my top 15 when I do the updated top 50. And yet again in the playoffs, although he maybe hasn't had that one like Artemi Panarin game. I don't think that he's at a game where he's had like 4 points. I think he might be in store for that come this in the playoffs. And if New York is going to beat Florida, he's going to have at least one of those games. And he is the one guy on New York that I think could just absolutely take over a game. We've seen it do it time and time again this season. So I have Artemi Panarin pretty safely at 5th right now in terms of the best players available. You can make an argument for him over Barkov or Tkachuk. I would definitely hear you out. I wouldn't think you're crazy or a biased Ranger fan for saying that. He's definitely in the conversation with those guys. I just think those guys is more so physical two-way guys. I probably prefer them come playoff time. Next up, Miro Heiskanen. Miro Heiskanen, 5 goals, 8 assists, 13 points. This year, not the most flashy offensive numbers like the prior year when he had 73 points, but he was arguably his best defensively in the regular season, and that has been the case yet again in these playoffs. Talked about it yesterday. 28 minutes a night this year in the playoffs. This guy just munches on minutes and has truly solidified himself as a top 5 defenseman in the entire NHL. I think he's kind of getting overshadowed by Quinn Hughes, not if he goes on to win the Stanley Cup, but he's been overshadowed a bit by Quinn Hughes this season. But I think he's also entered, there's a pretty consensus top 4 defensemen in the entire NHL, in my opinion. It's Cale Makar, Fox, Hughes, and Heiskanen. I think Heiskanen has separated himself maybe from, like, although I love Roman Josi, I love Rasmus Dahlin, I'm probably forgetting some other names. I think Heiskanen has kind of solidified himself as the 4th best defenseman in the entire NHL. Just so fundamentally sound both sides of the ice, especially defensively. Nowadays, far too many all offense, no defense guys get love. So it's really good to see Heiskanen start to get the respect that he deserves. He plays in maybe a non-traditional hockey market, but now that they're going on yet another run like he did in 2020, he is yet again, we're all reminded just how good Miro Heiskanen is. Number 7, this might be maybe a little bit controversial, but I have Evan Bouchard. He's not a McDavid and Draisaitl merchant. I hate when people say this. You look at his numbers, honestly, away from McDavid, and they're perfectly fine. They're perfectly still top 10, 15 defensemen in the entire NHL. He is fantastic in his own right, and I don't get why we tear down Bouchard when we criticize other stars for not showing up in the playoffs. Meanwhile, Evan Bouchard had 17 points in 12 games last year, was a massive reason why they even beat the LA Kings in the first round. This year, 20 goddamn points in his first 12 games. The most points ever in the first two rounds by a defenseman. Like, I don't care. Yes, he plays with McDavid and Draisaitl. That is historic. No other Edmonton defender was doing that. And also, defensively, he has come a long way in terms of his defensive impact. Part of that, yes, playing a full season with Matthias Ekholm, but he has fully became one of the best top 5 offensive defensemen in the entire NHL, as well as being pretty above average defensively. I've been very impressed with Evan Bouchard. Maybe he wouldn't put up 20 points in 12 playoff games if he wasn't on the goddamn Edmonton Oilers, but he would be a legit number 1 defenseman on 70 to 80%. A star number 1 defenseman. Like, yeah, if you threw him on goddamn Calgary, yeah, he's probably going for 50, 55 points. But if you throw him on any other playoff team, he's probably a 70 to 75 point guy while posting solid defensive results. He is an absolute stud. Next up, Jason Robertson, not having the most flashy postseason. He has 3 goals, 9 assists, 12 points in 13 games right now. When he's on, I think he is better than Evan Bouchard. It's just this season has been a little bit of a down year. He's really improved his defensive play. I thought he's been more of a complete two-way player this year. But when you consider last year, 109 points, and last year he wasn't that good in the playoffs. It was Rupe Hintz more so carrying them through the first 2 rounds. By the way, Rupe Hintz isn't going to be on this because he's still dealing with an injury. I don't know what he's going to come back to. But when looking at Robertson, still has shown up in these playoffs. He definitely needs to score some more goals. 3 goals in 13 games is unacceptable for a guy of Jason Robertson's stature, but he is still one of the best players in the entire NHL, probably going to be in my top 25, top 20 in the entire league whenever I revisit that list. Fantastic player for Dallas, and if Dallas is going to continue to go far, he needs to be their best player. As much as I love Wyatt Johnston, Jason Robertson is the better player, and Jason Robertson needs to step up in a big way against the Edmonton Oilers. Number 9, Sam Reinhart. Sam Reinhart having a solid playoffs, 4 goals, 5 assists in 11 games, but considering this guy scored, 56, 57 goals, I want to see more, because I know he's capable of doing more. Yes, he shot 25% during the regular season, but this guy is still a fantastic goal-scoring two-way player. His defensive impact does not get talked about nearly enough considering he plays with Barkov. People kind of just attribute to that. Even his results away from Barkov are still very good. I think Sam Reinhart has kind of been slept on. You can make an argument Carter Verhaeghe's probably been better in these playoffs than a Sam Reinhart, but if Florida is going to beat Edmonton, they're going to need Sam Reinhart to be that number 3 for the Florida Panthers and step up in a big way, because he was a top 10 player arguably in the entire NHL during this regular season. And then lastly, Mika Zibanejad. I could see you put Zibanejad ahead of Reinhart just because of the track record, but Zibanejad, when looking at Zibanejad, a lot of question marks around him coming into these playoffs, considering he scored like 2 5-on-5 goals in like the 2024, like January 1st on in 2024, the regular season, but he stepped up in a big way. He's goal scoring. He's basically doing everything that we we thought that he was capable of. He's finally stepped up in these playoffs. Mika May, as the Ranger fans are annoyingly calling it. He has really reminded us yet again why he scored 90 points the prior season. He is legit number one center. Not the best 5-on-5 still, but he shows up when it matters most, whether that's special teams or at times 5-on-5. Mika's Zibanejad. You could arguably put Trocheck here too as well. Trocheck's been better right now, but I think going forward, Zibanejad is just the better overall player. So in looking at that, that is my top 10. McDavid, Draisaitl, Tkachuk, Barkov, Panarin, Heiskanen, Bouchard, Robertson, Reinhardt, Zibanejad. Some other guys, again, Adam Fox. If I knew that maybe he's rested after a week and he's going to look fantastic, I can't really bet on that. I think he's dealing with something that's going to like surgery is going to come out and be like, Adam Fox is out for the next 3 months rehabbing from something. Other guys, Brandon Montour, I don't think that he's on the same level as Zibanejad or Reinhardt. Verhaeghe, I already mentioned. Who on Dallas? Wyatt Johnston, having a great run. I still don't think of as an overall player. He's cracking this good of a top 10. Chris Kreider, fantastic. Trocheck, fantastic. Edmonton. Zach Hyman, you can make an argument, I guess, for Zibanejad or Reinhardt over him, as well as a guy like RNH or Ekholm, but I'm pretty safe in my top 10. Let me know in the comments, what do you think, and I'll be seeing the next one.